Hi, Charlie here. And now for the moment that we've all been waiting for, the beginning of our learning Ashtadhyayi proper. Um, Now, one of the questions that arises as we approach the grammar is how much information is optimal to share at any one time, because there are layers of uh, layers of information from very early on. So I am going to try to approach it with staying close to the kernel of information needed for each sutra and gradually expanding and eventually adding more commentary and so on. So there's a structure to how we approach each sutra. The Ashtadhyayi is described as containing 8 books, Adhyaya, and each book has 4 sections, pada, and then there are sutras. So each sutra gets identified with a sequence of 3 numbers. The chapter, the quarter of the chapter, and then the number of the sutra in that chapter. And that's how we will proceed. Now, before we start, every day for a while, or every time we talk for a while, I want to review the Akshara Samamnaya. Ideally, do this with me. You don't have to go as fast as I'm going if I slip into that habit, but this needs to be internalized, as I've said before, because you will be doing it every time, virtually, I think, that you consider a sutra. So, a-i-un, ruluk, ayong, ayouch, hayavarat, lan, nyamangananam, jabangi, katatash, jabagadadash, kapachatata chatatav, kapayi shashasar hal. Great. So now our first sutra, Vrittiradayich. Vrittiradayich. Now, if you can, try to write that down by sound. Vrittiradayich. Now, there are a series of steps that we take every time we explore sutra. They will get more complicated as we go along very soon. Luckily, the first one is less complicated. So the first step goes back, is a analytic step that goes back to Rigveda. It's called Padapartha, and that involves separating the lexical units of an extended phrase. And what that chiefly involves is reversing the sandhi involved. So then you're left with discrete words and without their sandhi. So that's the first thing we do. So if we look at Vrittiradayich, now the first thing is, you'll see, as I said, 3 numbers. Since this is the very first sutra in Ashtadhyayi, its number is 111. Under that, I have circled another numeral, 16, which is the order of Vrittiradayich in Sarvasiddhanta Kaumadi. Again, I will go into some more detail about the function of Siddhanta Kaumadi in our work, but simple answer is it's a very comprehensive commentary, and that's how we'll use it. So that can always be helpful. Now, as you see below that is the Padapartaha. Padapartaha, and that is Vritti, At, Aich. Vriddhi at Aich. Vriddhi, that's a name, and or sanya. And as a result of that, this is a sutra that gives the name or defines the term vriddhi. Because of that, it is called a Sanya Sutra. Sanya Sutra, which I've listed underneath. So we have vriddhi at, which is dirgha a followed by t. Dirgha a followed by t. Now, below in green, which I'm sort of using to separate out technical terms, there's a sutra that, again, I'm mentioning just to have it in your ear, Tatparakalasya. That's a sutra that says, at its simplest, the core meaning, that a vowel in particular, which is either preceded or followed by t, which is t without a vowel, is to be understood as referring to that length of the vowel only. So, as we've mentioned before in considering the Akshara Samamnaya, otherwise in the grammar, if you see short it stands for all 18 forms of But there are times, obviously, when the grammar requires a rule to apply only to one length. So at is dirgha a followed by t. So that is translated to dirgha a only. And then we have aich, which is our first pratyahara in function. And what is aich? Iun ruluk eong, I ouch, I ouch, I ow. So aich is I ow. So if we then take the next analytic step, and we're left with vriddhi is dirgha a, dirgha ai, and dirgha ao. Dirgha a, dirgha ai, dirgha ao. Now, this is also an example of something we'll touch on as time goes on, but that while the sutras of Ashtadhyayi are well established and beyond controversy, the understanding of the sutra have been subject to many different thoughts and commentaries. So I am going to, again, start with this sort of least complicated version of this, but as my teacher presented this to me, he presented the t in at aich as referring just to the dirgha a, and most commonly in the grammar, the t will follow the vowel, but the rule applies to both t that precedes and follows. So the t that follows a also precedes aich, which means that, or is construed to mean that the I and the ow forms are also constrained to only the dirgha. And as we know, there's no hrasva, I, ow, but there are pluta, I, ow. So, taken all together, our first sutra means dirgha, or dirgha, a, I, and ow are called vriddhi. That's it. It's no mysteriousness, which sometimes happens with Western grammars discussing vriddhi. It's not a mystery at all. It's very, very straightforward, very precise, clean, unambiguous. The first sutra says this one thing. Vriddhi is the name we give to dirgha a, dirgha I, and dirgha ao. just checking. So I think we've covered all of the bits that I've written down there below. So that's it for our first sutra. Vritti at aich, vritti rad aich, vritti, dirga a, dirga I, and dirga ao are called vritti. That's it. Congratulations. And in this sutra, we have seen many little mechanisms already at play. We've seen pratyahara, direct from our akshara samamnaya of aich, aiun, reluk, eong, aich, I, ouch. And the first I taken with the last ch gives us I and ow. So aich, I, ow, a pratyahara. And as we know, the final letter of the final the final consonant of a pratyahara is it, which makes it disappear. So when we have aich in the sutra, we understand first that is the first along with the last, adirantyena sahita, and that gives us I, ow. And we also know that the ch in aich, the final consonant, halantyam, is called it, and which means it then disappears, having done its good work. Similarly, the at, in the at, this is also a final consonant. The t in at is also gets the name it. So once it has conveyed to us the meaning that this is only only applies to dirga a, the t of at also disappears. So we have pratyahara, aich, we have final t and taparasta kalasya, determining the length of the vowel. And we end up with our first sanya sutra. Take care. Bye.